Welcome to the Where to Hunt podcast, the podcast that connects public land hunting enthusiasts. Today is October 3rd, 2017. I'm your host, Eric Clark, and this is episode number 46. I'm not sure if I'm more excited about this episode or if my dad is. I got the opportunity to have a great guest on the show. He's been on other podcasts, and that's great, but I couldn't be more proud to have someone on that I think is a personal legend, which is Dan Infalt. He's been around in the hunting industry, so to speak. I don't even like to use that kind of terminology, but he's got the Hunting Beast forum that exists. He's got the YouTube channel, The Hunting Beast, and we got some great tactics that we get into on this week's episode, and just some really cool stories from Dan also, from someone that I think is a legend. He's been at it for so long. He's got such an old school mentality of get it done, not giving an F. Not into wearing this brand or that brand or doing the things that we see on TV. He's just a real hardcore kind of dude. So I'm very excited to introduce this week's guest. Additionally, I took a small break, I guess, and I was really getting back into the swing of things. And on 3 weeks ago today, actually, on September 12th, I have a baby girl that was born. So that took some getting used to before I can get back into the swing of things, but I am quote unquote back. Where to Hunt's back, and there's going to be a guest every week. And if there's not, I'll figure something else out. But I want to thank everybody for listening, staying tuned, and continuing to support Where to Hunt. I will stop yammering and bring on the guest. It's a great episode, so you're going to enjoy this one. Thanks so much. All right, so I'm going to welcome the guest of the week to the show. This week we have with us someone that I think is a legend in my world where I come from here in Wisconsin as a public land hunter. We got Dan Infalt with us. Dan, how you doing?
Hi, how you doing?
Doing great. It sounds like you just got out of the woods.
I did.
Any luck out there, or just kind of enjoying yourself, or what?
I set up on a point. I had a doe and a fawn come by. I was looking for a particular buck, but he didn't show.
Oh, that's too bad. You win some, you lose some. You got some really interesting tactics. I was just talking to you before I hit the record button. It's hard to even know where to begin because I feel like you're like a deer hunter encyclopedia, incarnate. So I'm sure it's going to be a great episode. I'm pretty excited about it. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, kind of when you got into hunting, how long you've been doing it for, and kind of what your name of the game is in the hunting world, I guess.
I'm 50 years old. I started hunting when I was a kid, so I don't really remember the start. I've always been into it. I think I shot my first deer when I was 9 years old, and I've been killing them ever since. I've got a forum-based website called The Hunting Beast, where people talk hardcore tactics. A lot of public land guys on there. I've also got a YouTube page where I got a lot of videos of the hunts that I've done, and a lot of the bucks that I've killed are on video on the YouTube page. And I think my fame has come from the videos I've made about how to hunt, not just public land, but everywhere, but mostly leaning towards public land.
Sure.
And showing how to hunt terrain-based for whitetails.
Well, it's interesting because that's one of the things I feel like I would say I struggle with it, but it's definitely a tricky thing to add value. And, I really want to add value to the listeners that I have. And, it seems like you've really been doing that for a long, long time. You've just been trying to give people good tactics, honest tactics with no sort of, you're not worried about people encroaching on what you do or giving away your trade secrets. It sounds like, I don't know if it is that you really want to help people, but you really are helping them. You're giving out some phenomenal hunting tactics, the ones that you can't get from, the DVDs or the YouTube pages or whatever, where people are just sitting in a stand wearing every freaking brand that they can put on themselves. And, that's just not how hunting is, at least not in my experience. First of all, I can't afford those damn brands. And second of all, I don't see bucks like that just sitting there wearing that kind of crap. So, you take a different approach from my understanding.
Yeah, I really don't like the direction that hunting's going in, where it's turning into, all about the latest gadgets and products and stuff. And deer farming and stuff, and it's getting away from the whole the basis of the hard scouting, hard work, and figuring deer out, and getting more into buying your way into good deer. And I'm hoping that that I portray the old image of hunting hardcore and getting the job done, and that you don't have to spend all your money to do it.
Yeah, I think you embody that pretty well. I got a cousin that's local, and he seems to have that same style, same as my uncle, same as my dad, and I probably mix a little bit of each, but I always aspire to be hardcore in the sense that I just like adventure. I really like going off the unbeaten path just to see what's going to happen. Sometimes I'm less worried about getting a deer than I am just having a great story of, falling on a river or something stupid like that. Because I tried to do something that, what the hell are you doing over there? Well, I don't know. It looked like a good place to try to go. No one else is over here. So maybe
whatever
different.
Don't kill you gives you a good story.
That's how I look at it. I'm always just trying to have a good time and enjoy myself. Some people take, it's good to take hunting seriously. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I really try to just kind of extract the experience from it more than anything else personally. But, from some of the podcasts, the other ones that I've heard were that you've guested on, or just watching some of the YouTube videos that you have, or reading some articles you've posted. I mean, you're all over if you Google your name, and, it seems like you just have a different mentality or perspective about how you actually go about hunting. So I kind of wanted to just, kind of wind you up and let you go on that kind of topic, because your approach is so unique. Where everyone else zigs, you're kind of zagging.
Yeah, I'm kind of just looking at what everybody else is doing, looking at their failures, and figuring out what they're missing, basically. If you look at hunters, they all hunt the same. They all, I mean, it's like textbook how people all do the same stuff. They access woods the same and everything else.
Yep.
And I look for those little hidden spots that they're missing, If you hunt like everybody else, you'll have the results of everybody else. And
by and large, not everyone else is getting the deer that you seem to be getting. And not even to say that that's the name of the game, because that's not the case for everybody, but that it sure speaks to the challenge that you're chasing down, so to speak. I mean, at your level, I got to imagine it takes a lot to kind of tickle your fancy. When you get a big buck, you've kind of earned it. It's almost like you're out there playing chess with these animals, It
is, it's like a chess game. I think, a hunter goes through stages, and, when I was younger, it was more about making sure I killed a good buck every year, and now it's more about having fun, and I still manage to kill a good buck every year, but it's not really mandatory,
Yep. Yeah, I'm probably having more fun than I am killing big bucks, but with as much knowledge that you have, because you've been doing it since you're 9 years old, I gotta imagine, I mean, the amount of effort that you're putting in over that compounded knowledge over the years, it's kind of second nature to how you're going about it. I think I actually pulled one quote from, I don't know where the article came from. I don't know if it's one you wrote or someone said it about you, but you said something along the lines, if I hit fresh sign, I hunt it right then before the buck has a chance to come through and smell that I was there. And I actually have had that thought in my mind, but sometimes I have a hard time recognizing, if I'm onto something good or not. And really, on public land, half the battle is getting away from the crowd.
Right. I'm looking at a piece of public property, and I'm eliminating everything where people go. And in some cases, I eliminated the whole property and say, I wouldn't hunt that. As a matter of fact, that's most of the cases. There's probably 1 out of 10 public properties around here I'd hunt.
Sure.
So I'm where I live at in southeastern Wisconsin, there's a very heavy hunting population, and it's hard for deer just to make it of age to grow the antlers you need to satisfy you. So what I'm really looking for here is wet stuff, water, swamp, marsh, stuff where you got to go through water to get to it. And people out here will go through everything, but you run into 2 inches of water, even though they got rubber boots on, they won't go through it. And I really like to hunt the stuff that's near roads and stuff, like between parking lots. A lot of my biggest bucks have been right alongside the road, right alongside parking lots.
Right under your nose, basically, huh?
Yeah, and basically, everybody goes to that parking lot, and they go out into the woods. Some go a little ways, some go a long ways, some go a little ways and then cut off. But nobody parks there and walks along the road and hunts in between the parking lots. And if there's, you still need good habitat.
Sure.
But if you got that good habitat between those two parking lots, that can be awesome. One of the biggest bucks I ever shot with a bow was a huge 9-pointer. Had one of the main beams was 31 inches and the other was just under 31 inches. Just a massive buck. I watched that thing from a public land parking lot from a window and kept waiting for the right wind because he was bedding in a spot where the wind was blowing right in there. And when I finally got the wind, I went in there and hunted him. But I would sit there in that parking lot reading the paper while hunters are going out, acting like I'm just some Joe reading the paper while I'm watching for this buck. And I ended up shooting that thing so close to the public land parking lot that you could throw a rock from where that deer was and hit one of the cars in the parking lot.
Well, you got to think the logic on that is simply that if you're going to shoot an animal that big, you're not going to want to drag it too far. let's just cut to the chase here. No, that's pretty incredible. That's the stuff that's just simply overlooked. I mean, is it that you're trying to get out to some high ground inside of that swamp that you gotta trek through some,
they won't
shit to get
water.
there?
I mean, they gotta have some sort of ground.
Yep.
But what you want to find is stuff that's surrounded by water, it's swampy, nasty. People don't want to go in it. And when you think about a deer, a lot of times you give them more intelligence than they have. But what their whole life revolves around their nose, not their eyes. And we think eye set, everything we think about is what we see.
Yep.
They could see something and that don't bother them, but if they smell it, that's the problem. Like if you ever notice a deer will see you
and they're confused, they'll just kind of stare.
Smell you.
Yep, absolutely.
Like if we heard them, we'd have to circle around to see them. That's the difference. We think with our eyes, they think with their nose. So when a deer goes through a property, it's based on where it goes on scent, on what it smells, like coyotes and people, the main predators it has. So it's going where predators don't bother it. Well, coyotes and people don't go through water, so they'll find little isolated patches of ground that are surrounded by water. Coyotes and people don't hang out next to the road, so they'll go hang out next to the road. So what I do is I look at the property and I go, where does nobody ever bother? And there ain't too much of anything that nobody ever goes into. I mean, shed hunters or whatever, or hikers or mushroom hunters or something will get into stuff every now and then. But you're looking for the spot where they seldom go.
Sure. The spot where the masses aren't going to be going. That path
right.
that's
And it doesn't necessarily
down.
have to be next to the road. It just has to be someplace that people overlook or just don't go to. And if you go to the main woods that looks like deer should be there, it looks like what you see on the TV screen when you're watching deer hunting, and there's big rubs all over the place, I would run. You'll see a tree stand in every tree around those rubs,
Yep.
But the thing with sign is, 95% of the deer sign, like rubs and scrapes, are put down at night.
Right, so you're not going to see that animal, and especially once they start to catch wind or the scent. I mean, they're going nocturnal, right? It doesn't take long for them to do that,
right.
I imagine.
Well, deer are automatically, mature bucks are automatically fairly nocturnal in the fall, and it doesn't have as much to do with pressure as what people think. It has more to do with timing, because even on private ranches and stuff, those deer get nocturnal, even where they're not really being hunted that much.
Yep.
It's more with timing. But in the fall, when they get hard antlers, I mean, they're only up a half hour of daylight, and that's it for their whole time period. The rest is at night. They're wandering around doing stuff, and they're in that 1 hour that they're up awake and moving around in daylight. They're not moving very far. So the majority of sign you find out in the woods is scattered all over the place, like rub lines and stuff is done at night. And, people sit on these rub lines hoping to get lucky, but they get their scent in there, and once they've hunted it once, the deer knows they've been there, they get even more nocturnal. So for me, that sign has to be coming out of something that looks like bedding.
Yep.
Or it has to be coming out of known bedding. Or I just eliminate it. It's not, I could care less. All the big rub tells me out in the woods is that a big buck was there.
And that's
something,
but that's not
looking
everything.
at.
Yep.
But I'm not looking here.
So
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The average guy is going to put a stand right over the top of that rub.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, okay, there's a rub here that tells me that this giant buck's around. Where is he? You know, so I'm going to look at maps and aerials and search for those little unknown spots where he could hide and live unmolested.
So are you kind of, well, I guess I got two questions. Are you, I imagine you're to the point now where you can look at a property on you know, Google Earth, Google Maps, whatever it is, and you have a good idea of where those bucks ought to be bedding down. I ask because I'm trying to think about, you know, without getting into a bedding area with boots on the ground and getting it all stunk up with scent, are you looking at maps and trying to figure that stuff out and feeling confident that, yep, that's where, if I were that big guy, that's where I would be?
Yeah, I get on aerials and topos and stuff, depending on what kind of terrain I'm looking at, and I study that. However, you still need to get boots on the ground. I mean, it's not always as perceived on a map, but it gives you a good general direction. I mean, I know which places I should look at by the map.
Sure.
But then you physically do have to go look at it. You can't just trust everything off the map.
Yeah, and that's where I find it because you're right. I mean, that's the thing that I struggle with is kind of like, you know, what the chicken or the egg. You know, what comes first here? I mean, I'm looking at maps all the time, but then by the time I get out there, obviously things are never as they seem, or sometimes they're better than they seem, or whatever that looks like. But you know, the remark that I commented on, where if you hit fresh sign, you're going to hunt it right then. You know, are you looking at a map going, okay, that's where I think the beds are, I'm going to confirm with boots on the ground? Or is it going the other way where you're at boots on the ground, you're going, okay, well, I'm not going to go any further because I think now that I know there's a big buck in the area, I want to go back and look at the map and then check based on where I've seen the sign? Or is it, I mean, it's just kind of maybe a little bit of both?
It is a little bit of both.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of, you know, scouting transitions. It's a little bit of studying maps. That hot sign thing you keep bringing up, what that really is that, you know, the way I hunt, when you go from point A to point B, most guys have a destination in mind. They're going from their truck, they're going to a certain stand, and that's where they're going to hunt. For me, I have like a 75% idea of where I'm going. I have a plan to go out to this spot, but whether I make it there or not, it's a different story. And I'll follow. I don't walk a straight line down the path where everybody else walks. A lot of the times I'll take a route that follows a transition line.
Yep.
And in case your listeners don't know what a transition line is, that's edge, where something meets another thing, like hardwoods meets swamp. That's a good transition.
It's not necessarily cover, but transition, specifically transition, not like a line of cover or something.
Right, because a lot of guys think like big bucks bed out in the middle of thick areas. They don't, and that's a common misconception. They usually bed on the edges, so they're on the edge of that thick cover. You know, on the edge of the
yep. They're not in the buckthorn. They're on the edge of it. Sure.
Right, they're not out in the middle of it.
Yep.
You know, if they're in the middle of it, they're on another edge, like an island edge, or you know what I'm saying. But they're not just bedding out in the middle of buckthorn.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't play right with the way they play wind and stuff on their beds. And I can say that with confidence after studying their beds for 50 years.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That's the kind of stuff I'm after here with this particular episode. Just the stuff that people aren't thinking of the way that you are.
So I'm following that transition line, and if I find hot sign like fresh rubs coming out of swamp where they bed, I mean, what are they going into that thick swamp for? I mean, to chew on thorny bushes? So they're probably coming out of bedding there. So I'll set up on it. You know, if it's good sign, it looks like a good buck's coming out there, I set up on it. But what I don't set up, and that's what I'm calling hot sign,
mm-hmm.
what I don't set up on is the middle of an open hardwoods when I find a rub line. Even if it's a big cluster of rubs and just scrapes all over, yeah, they're probably all meeting there in the middle of the night and doing that, you know?
Yep. How many times have you, I don't know, I mean, so I'm just hung up on the swamp idea now, and I know you've done different videos, I think, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but you've done like hill country and farm and thermos and wind, and I mean, you've covered so many really good, dense topics so well. But the swamp thing I find fascinating because, I got a pair of waders, and I'm like, well, any chance I can get those things on, I'm strapping up for adventure. That's where my mind goes. But you're saying, a lot of guys, even with rubber boots, they're not going to trek into this stuff. How much preparation are you putting into getting through some of these thicker spots where there's water?
Well, what do you mean by preparation?
Like, are you ever getting into a situation where I know you said some of the spots are like in between parking lots, but are you getting out a canoe? Are you putting on hip waders, chest waders? Are you just wearing a pair?
I jump in the canoe, and I got a kayak that's got a rig on it for a stand and a bowl for some of those spots where you can't even get a canoe back in. And I do hunt some of those areas. I do have spots where I got to cross a river. I seldom wear waders. I don't think I've worn waders in 40 years. I usually just get wet. But canoes and kayaks I take out.
So how does that play out, like late season if it's colder out, getting wet like that? Do you got like a backpack with extra gear that you can swap into, or?
No, usually if it's like a swamp or marsh, I can find a way to get in there without getting too wet.
Okay.
With rubber knee-high boots. There's been a couple cases, like there's one spot I used to hunt where I used to go out there, and you kind of laugh at this, but I used to take all my clothes off and hold them over my head, my bow and stuff, walk through the river, go on the other side and redress, because if the clothes stayed dry, I stayed dry.
I only laugh because that's something that I guess, as hunters, whether you're the guy that's getting at it or you're the guy that's just kind of whatever, but for me, I'm thinking, if I get that excited about an animal and I get to a point where I got to cross a frickin' river, and that means it's the difference between me seeing and or having a shot at this thing or having an opportunity and or getting it, yep, my clothes are they're coming off. I'm going to make it happen. I'm not going to be – there's no way that if I know that that's what's happening, that I'm going to turn the other direction. I can't picture that world where that would be the case. So I'm laughing because I'm right there with you on that. And it is kind of funny to picture, right?
Yeah.
As hunters, we do some pretty crazy shit for
these
animals.
Did you see that video I got on YouTube that chasing down a dream?
You know what? I saw it because I was watching a bunch of other ones, and I didn't click on that one yet. But I've been
you need to watch that one. On that one, I'm hunting a conservancy that you apply to hunt.
Yep.
And from where I parked my truck to where I was hunting was 2 miles back. And you got to cross a creek. The creek ain't real deep, but it's got spots that go up to like your waist. It's more like it's got no bottom kind of thing.
Yep.
But in that video, I stripped down to my underwear and dragged it through right on video. And I got a lot of comments back from people like, why don't you just buy a pair of waders? Are you just trying to put this on for show? Well, I don't want to carry a pair of waders.
Waders are heavy. They're hot. They
2
smell.
miles back there. I just don't like them. I don't like all that extra weight. A lot of people laugh, but when I go hunting, I take a bow, and because I videotape, I have my video camera.
Mm-hmm.
I have a camera arm strapped to my stand, and a release in my pocket, and a string for my bow, and some milkweed, and that's about all I take with me. And a lot of these guys have backpacks with more stuff in it than I take on a 3-day camping trip.
So, that's really, you mentioned in the beginning, like, I'm trying to really portray this old school kind of mentality, this hardcore hunter, and you're doing it. Effortlessly. You're just being who you are, and it's just, you just are kind of embodying and representing that mentality that I think the hunting industry needs right now. We got to get people. Yeah,
I think it's kind of lost. I grew up in an era where everybody that hunted hard was like that. Yep. People were poor. They didn't have money for extra stuff, and we just, we had to scramble around with what we had to hunt with. And I learned to live like that, and I still do.
It's funny. I don't know, just because we're talking about it, but I hunted with the bow my dad handed down to me all the way up until last year. I finally caved and got something different. It wasn't new. I got it used. But it was a Dart and Viper dual cam. He's killed plenty of deer with it. And that's what I've been hunting with for like the last, 9 years, I guess, for bow. And up until like maybe 3 years ago, I had the same camouflage, old school camouflage giant onesie, that I wore.
Yeah.
And that was it. I didn't have anything in there, and I've kind of dipped a toe on this other side of it. I'm going, what the hell am I doing? Because half that shit I either don't know how to use, can't afford, or it's not worth it. It's just not looking back in the river, that's just not what's necessary to make it happen. Now, getting down in your underwear to cross the river, that's what it takes, you know? It's not the gear, it's the lack thereof.
Right.
No, but I asked that question just because, you know, I don't know, that's the kind of stuff I think about. You know, what do I need to I think that if I'm clumsy, so I'm the guy that does fall. I fall down a lot. Just because I'll step on something slippery, I'll trip, I'll get my foot stuck in a mud suction pit or something like that, and I'll go down. And if it's cold out, then to me that's going to ruin my hunt because now I'm freaking cold and wet and it could be a problem.
There's been plenty of times when I sat shivering in a tree, soaked.
Yeah. I got a buddy that we did cut through some marsh, incidentally, not on purpose. We weren't smart enough back then. And his boots froze to the stump he was sitting on. He just wore his combat. He was in the Marine Corps. He wore his desert camis or whatever, like the combat boots. They had like the little screen drain on it for like, you know, it's supposed to make your feet breathe or whatever, but it got all sorts of water in there and then they got frozen to the frickin' stump. That's pretty great. That was a pretty cold sit. I remember that. You got a favorite story other than that one that was in between the parking lots, or a favorite memory, or like, you know, man, even if it's not about the deer itself, anything like that?
Oh,
tough question, right?
I would say the story of my biggest buck is probably a good one. I was hunting a very large non-typical, and he was bedding in the same spot all the time. And if you'd sit back, you could see him in the spot because it was in a cattle pasture that hadn't been used in about 10 years. So it's high grass and brush, but you could see into it in spots. And there's a willow tree that was laying over, and it formed like a little bridge. The tree itself, the base of it, before it went back up, like it had fallen once or something, and then started growing again.
Mm-hmm.
And underneath the bottom of that little bridge thing is where he would lay. And he would never get far enough in daylight. And I'd sit back and I'd observe him from a distance, and I'd try to find some flaw, but it's like open grass, and to get close enough was tough. And every time it was a west wind, I'd see him there. And he was there for 2 years, and after the first year, I went in there in the wintertime, and I found one of his sheds laying right in the bed. And I knew he was never there when it was a different wind. It had to have west in it, you know, southwest, west, northwest. But anything that had any east to it or straight south or straight north, he was never there. So on Thanksgiving Day, we had a west wind in the morning, and we were having a big Thanksgiving party. My whole family was coming over and stuff. And midday, that wind changed to east, and I'm thinking, man, he couldn't even get out of there. You know, how could he even leave? Because it's just wide open grass. I don't think he'd get up in the middle of the day.
So you're thinking, in the back of your mind, everyone's chowing down turkey, and you're thinking, I got to get out there.
Yeah. So I go, exactly. So I said, I got to go out and give this a shot. And you imagine my old lady's mad at me.
Are you freaking kidding
Dad
me?
And everybody else.
No, I'm not kidding you. This is it.
So I just do it. You know, I grab my shotgun and I go. And it was gun season because Thanksgiving week is gun season here. Yeah. And it used to be shotgun back in those days. And I took that shotgun and I bunged it to my back, and I put some this little patch of cattails that was in front of that bed in line with me. And I crawled one step at a time because now I had the wind in my favor, right to that patch of cattails. And that patch of cattails was only like 15 yards from that bed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cold out, and there was a thin layer of ice in the water, and I had to just break every little piece of ice as I went, and I'm getting soaked as I go.
Is it making that like a crunch every time too then?
Well, a little, but I started to break it real soft. It took me a while, and I crawled all the way up to that bush, and believing that I believe that deer's there, you know. And I unbunged that gun off my back, and I'm sitting there trying not to get up high enough where you can see me. Then I get to my knees, and I just pop up, and here that thing is, 15 yards from me, laying in that bed looking at me with the most surprised look a deer could ever make, staring at me, and I shot it right in its bed, and I was thinking, I could have did that with my freaking bow.
Wow.
But I never had the balls to do it, you know?
Yep.
because to get that close to the shotgun, I mean, it's the same thing. But
Yep.
I shot him right in his bed when he was laying there looking at me.
Wow.
And that's the biggest buck score-wise I ever shot. He's in the mid-180s.
What year was that?
Oh, geez, I think that was in the early 90s. I think it was like 91 or somewhere in there.
Your wife still hold that one over your head or what?
Yeah, there was like 3 Thanksgivings in a row that I ruined.
Oh, man.
When I was younger, I was really hardcore, and hunting was everything. And, if I could go back, I'd probably change a little of that because those deer aren't that important. That I missed birthdays and Halloweens with the kids and stuff because everything revolved around hunting. But I wouldn't take that back because it made me who I am now.
Absolutely. And when it's in your blood like that,
it created me. And, I'm not that kind of person now where I put hunting in front of my family or anything else or my friendships.
Yep.
But I can look back on that and I have a reflection to that. And I can guide others in the right direction because of what that taught me.
Yep. Yeah, now that I got a kid of my own, hopefully she'll end up liking hunting, but, we'll see. She's born right before the 12th. So bow opened up here in Wisconsin. Was it the 16th? I think it was September, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it was hot, real hot. I don't know. How did you feel about that? I mean, what was it, like 80-something
Well, I didn't
degrees?
mind it at all. I was wearing a T-shirt and blue jeans.
Just out there doing it anyways. I always get concerned about the meat. I just wonder, like, man, if it's that damn hot, you got flies and maggots.
Well, it was that hot, so I didn't, I really wanted to take a doe early.
Yeah.
But in that heat, I wouldn't. So then it was buck or nothing. But even so, I mean, the buck ain't going to rot on me. I'm just going to take care of it immediately.
Yep. That's good.
So you just get right on it. But the only bucks that went by me were small, but the movement the first week of season was phenomenal. And in my opinion, that early September time frame that we open in Wisconsin, that first week or so in Wisconsin is the best time frame to shoot a truly mature buck. It's way better than rut, if you ask me.
Now, tell me why you think that, because I think the same thing, but I wonder why you think it. I'm curious to see why you think that.
Well, they're still in their summer patterns, and they're moving real good in daylight.
Yep.
But those mature bucks, when they get nocturnal, they're even nocturnal during the rut. Most of what people are seeing during the rut are 2- and 3-year-olds.
Sure.
And every now and then a big one makes a mistake or it moves a little further and gets shot during rut. But they're really not running around chasing does rampantly everywhere. Mm-hmm. If they were, they'd get killed. There's no way a big buck could run around all day long chasing does and not get killed. He'd get killed in one day.
Yeah, because he's such a big target.
Take a walk around any public property during the rut. You run into a guy every 15 minutes. There's guys everywhere.
That buck's not getting through. Yep. You're damn right about that. Well, I always kind of thought, like, that opening day, that opening week, whatever it is, it's like an opportunity where it's a clean slate. It's fresh. People haven't been out there short of scouting, but maybe not in that early of the season. It's just I like the opportunity that exists, especially when you talk about the patterns of those deer. They haven't changed up their patterns yet from summer. So
I'll give you an example. Opening, not opening weekend, but the next weekend.
Sure.
We had this one spot we were waiting to hunt, me and my hunting buddy Mario, and we were pretty sure that there'd be a big buck there right away at the start of the season because there's been a pattern with this particular point, having a big buck there every year opening, bedding there. So I told him, you go ahead and go in and give it a shot. And he went in there, and he had a 170-inch 10-pointer come in an hour before dark. But he got downwind of him and spooked. I was trying to figure out exactly where that thing was bedding, and I went into the bedding area on a windy day with an east wind where I could get in there this last weekend and just did an observation. And that thing got out of its bed probably 10 minutes to closing, and it moved about 5 yards. That's the difference between October and early September.
What the heck?
So that's the difference.
He's literally getting up to take a stretch. I mean, what else?
Well, yeah, I mean, usually they get further than that.
Yeah.
But the point is that you really got to get in a tight window of movement once it gets to around October.
Mm-hmm.
That this first week or into the second week of September is just awesome for those big bucks actually move into a food source or something. It's still in a huge movement,
mm-hmm.
but like say you get an oaks 100 yards from the bedding, they'll make it to those oaks, to eat the acorns in daylight.
Yep.
Where in October they're not making it that far. You got to cut that, in half. You got to get really close to their bedding, and that's the difference. That's why that early September time frame is so good. I mean, just think about it during the summer, all the way up until hunting season in Wisconsin, which is that early September, right? You're seeing them out in bean fields in the evening in daylight, big mature bucks.
Oh yeah, yep.
Are you seeing them out walking around like that in October?
I've seen a damn thing, and I got bean fields right by my house that I freaking glass and drive. I will make a point to drive out of my way to go that route, which is nothing to do with where I'm going, but I will go. My wife's like, "Why are you going this way?" I'm like, "Well, because I want to see the deer," and there's nothing. I'll
tell you what, if they opened up deer season September 1st, would you see some monsters get shot?
Well, I bet.
Yeah.
It's exciting stuff. I appreciate taking time out of the woods I know you're done for the day anyways, but that's just how I always say it, to be on the show. It means a lot. I think the advice and knowledge you shared and the stories are awesome. I appreciate it a ton. You already said you're the Hunting Beast. Is it just thehuntingbeast.com where people can go find your stuff and your information? Or you got more going on than that?
thehuntingbeast.com.
All right.
My YouTube videos are pretty cool. If anybody wanted to just look at some good hunting videos for free.
And that channel is the Hunting Beast.
That's
Extreme Whitetail Tactics.
It's actually Extreme Whitetail Tactics, yeah.
Okay.
But you can search the Hunting Beast too; it'll come right up.
Rock on, good deal.
Or just search my name; all of it comes up.
And you keep that up to date pretty regularly, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's pretty cool.
I got a good
awesome.
Story for you.
Yeah,
I got a good story for you. So I shot a doe on Friday, and it's just a good story. so I'm going out hunting, and I'm going to hunt on this swamp island, and it's a spot where I've killed a lot of big bucks. Actually, like 7 or 8 of them, right in this exact area. As a matter of fact, the 12-pointer I shot last year was right there. It's real close to a parking lot, and there's an older fellow that lives next to the parking lot who's always asking me for advice, asking me where to hunt and stuff. And I'm a little careful about it because he talks a lot. But I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, he's saying, hey, I haven't seen nothing all year, and you're seeing deer. I got a journal on my site, and he reads it. So he sees I've been seeing deer every time out. He goes, I just shoot anything. And I tell you what, I said, I know this spot that's got a lot of deer in it. And I tell him how to get there and where to go, and he goes out there to go hunting, and I go out to this island. So I'm parked right across the street from his house. So I get in this island, and I know more than getting a tree, and he's texting me he shot one already.
Oh, man.
So he shot a doe, and he's all excited about it.
So made his freaking
I said, well, I'll meet you at my truck after I'm done hunting. So I'm sitting there, and about an hour goes by, and a doe starts coming on, and it's starting to get dusky. It's right around, it's getting close to closing time. It's coming on. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this because there's no buck sign back here. When I went in there, and I just decided if the doe came in, I'd shoot it if there's nothing else coming.
Yep.
So it comes on, and I'm getting ready to shoot it, and I hear, Dan! I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And it's funny because you can clearly hear it on the video. And I'm like, really? And I hear, Dan! And I'm like, oh, man, you got to be kidding me.
My heart.
So I'm trying to get this deer shot before it gets spooked because it keeps looking back at, this Dan! So I shoot it, and it runs towards me. And when I shot, I heard a loud slap noise, and I thought, oh, I might have guts. That makes that pop noise when you hit guts.
Yep.
And it runs past me and stops at the edge of the swamp where I came in, and then runs into the swamp, and he gets silent. And I'm like, I don't know if he's laying in there or not, but that's my entrance. So I get down, I go over and I look for blood, and now it's getting a little dusky, so I got to turn the flashlight on and look, and there's blood spray everywhere where I hit it. So I'm like, okay, this is good. But I got to go out of here different. I can't go out that way or I'll kick it. So I jump into the swamp. It is deep, nasty crap up to my waist, you know. So I'm going through this stuff, and that guy's getting closer. Dan! Danny! And I see a light flashing. You know, I'm like, really? So I start heading over there. And I come out, and I walk up to him, and I light him up, and I'm like, what do you want? And here, I don't even know who this guy is. The guy goes, what are you doing back there? And I'm covered in goo. And I says, I'm deer hunting. What are you doing? He goes, I'm walking my dog, Danny.
Shut up.
I'm not kidding you. Honest to God, he's walking his dog named Dan.
Holy shit.
Yelling Dan.
This whole time, you're like, what is with this guy?
And I says to him, what are you doing out in the in the middle of the woods?
And he's going, what the hell are you doing in the middle of the swamp? I'm walking my dog.
At night, walking a dog, and he's going out further. It's not like he's going towards the parking lot. He goes, well, I walk him at night because otherwise the hunters are all bothered. I'm like, try noon. So it gets even better because we go over and I finally meet up with Greg, and we go over to look for his deer. And I find back hair on top of some leaves, no blood, and you see where the arrow ricocheted off of some branches before it hit it.
Ah, crap.
And I'm pretty sure it just hit the back straps by the looks of everything. And we tracked, and I couldn't pick up blood for 100 yards, and we were out there for a few hours. So we went and got my deer out, and then he said he was going to go back in the morning with his dog. So in the morning, he calls me up. And now bear with me, this is good.
I'm right there with you.
He calls me up and he says, hey, I got about 100 yards from here and I picked up blood. He goes, just like big, dark, dried blood drops in the leaves. I said, well, how good's the trail? He goes, it ain't bad. He goes, every couple of feet there's a blood drip. And now this is a guy who's only shot one deer before, one or two, you know.
Yeah.
So he's excited, you know. So he's like, well, I'm going to follow it this way. And I says, well, the way you're going, there's a hill over there they always bet on. I said, if it goes towards the hill and you lose it, check on that hill. He says, okay. So he calls me back about an hour later, and he says, it went up on a hill, and he looked all over the place. He couldn't pick up a bed or the deer or anything, but now he found blood, and he says, it's red and runny and looks fresh. What do I make of that? I said, well, you probably kicked it out of its bed. I said, just keep following it. I go, it's probably still alive, but stay with it till you lose it. So a couple hours goes by, and he calls me, and he says, I've been following it, and it went into this little thicket. He says, but you ain't going to believe this. It's going around in circles around me. He says, there's blood on every single trail in here. And I know the thicket he's talking about. It's only like an acre in size.
Sure.
I says, there's no way that deer's still in there if you're wandering around in there. I says, walk the perimeter till you find the blood going out. So he calls me back in an hour. He says, I found it. He said, but it went across this wood lot and it entered a cornfield. He goes, I can't find it in the cornfield because of the dirt. The dirt sucked up the blood. I said, well, go over to the other side of the cornfield and look along the edges and see what you find. And then I offered, I said, do you want me to come out there? And he says, no, I got this. I said, okay. Because you got to remember, this is an old guy and he's disabled. He has a hard time. He's been out there all day now, you know.
Wow.
So then he calls me and he says, you ain't going to believe this, but this deer is going in little tiny circles, like 12-foot circles and loops. I go, are you kidding me? I've never seen a deer do that. He goes, I haven't either. He goes, but it's going in loops. So then I'm going out to go hunting for the evening. So he's been out there all day, right? He calls me back and he says, I got to figure it out. And I says, what'd you figure out? He says, well, my dog cut his foot and I've been tracking the dog.
Oh, God, that poor guy. Oh, my God.
I almost crashed my truck. I was laughing so hard.
Like, run 12-foot loops.
Tell you what, if that dog lost that much blood, he better take it to a vet.
Holy crap. I can't imagine. I've had some weird instances of tracking deer where we've, like, tracked someone else's and, whatever, just weird stuff like that. But I haven't had anything that goofy with a dog. His foot. And then the night, whatever it was, it's the night before. Dan!
Yeah, it's never normal with me. There's always something weird happens.
I love it. I'll be sharing your YouTube page. We got a decent
Cool.
following. We'll share that stuff out there. Make sure people are checking in on it. You got a good following too, though. But there's always people that don't know about stuff. That's a great thing about the day and age that we live in. So.
Cool.
Well, cool. Thanks so much. Good luck this season. I'll keep an eye on your stuff, and I can't wait till you get something because it's only a matter of time. It's not when, it's if, or not if. It's not if, it's when. Said that backwards.
There's only 1 year since I think it was since 1989. There's only 1 year in between there that I didn't get a big buck.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited for you, and I'm excited to take some of the tactics you have here. Good. Well, we're not too far. I'm actually in. I don't know if you're familiar, but I'm in like the Lake Country area. I'll say that. I don't want to give people my hometown.
Yeah, you're in the same area as me.
Not
I
far.
don't all this stuff around here. Yeah.
I was just out in Ottawa last week and on a conservancy plot of land that we got drawn for. So that's exciting. Nice weekend to be out.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Have a great night and good luck this season, Dan. I appreciate it.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, bye.
Looking for a spot to hunt? Download the free Where to Hunt app for your smartphone today. Avoid hunters, see less people, see more deer. With the Where to Hunt app, you will know where other hunters are before you see them. Just search Where to Hunt from the App Store to download.
All right, so that was, well, I think it was a really awesome episode. I think there were some nuggets of information in there that can be used over and over again. This episode's going to be replayed by me a lot. I'm definitely going to go back to this one quite often, I think. In any event, the tip of the week this week, my tips of the week are always, I don't know, I think they're kind of cheesy, but for whatever it's worth, I think this week the tip is change your perspective. And Dan didn't say this on the interview, but this is something that he had written in an article he wrote. And it was, quote, "I would rather be hunting for deer than hunting for a straight limbless tree," end quote. And he was referencing the type of tree stand that he uses, which is one that's got, some DIY silence stuff on there, but it's a hang-on stand with climber sticks, and that's the kind of stand I use, that my dad uses. I haven't hunted a stand in a little while, mainly because I'm too cheap to go buy a new harness system, so I'd rather be safe than falling out of a tree. So in any event, really he's going after mobility here, and he said, a lot of these guys that hunt with climbers, you get a lot of that mobility, but then you're stuck to a tree that is straight and limbless. And based on what Dan had said in this particular episode, is that a lot of these deer like to bed down on edges, or transitions, I should say. So you're not always going to find that perfect tree on a transition or near a transition where you want to be. So the kind of circle back around to my point is change your perspective. Quit looking for the perfect tree or the perfect spot. Look where the deer are. And, I could take a lot of advice out of this episode for myself. And that's exactly what I intend on doing, which is interesting because, this is a 46th podcast that I've had for Where to Hunt now. And, I've taken little nuggets of each episode I've ever done with the different people that I've talked to, because I look to them as, maybe not the expert per se, but collectively, there's a lot of great voices that come on this show, and there's a lot of good information that comes from this stuff, whether usually it's more tactic-based driven, but there have been a couple that have been product-based, and you start to mix that all together over the course of 46 episodes, and there's just some great information jam-packed into this. So most of the tips that I give come from that kind of thought process, and, as I go out hunting probably this coming weekend, when I get the opportunity, I'll be taking that tip into the woods with me, which is simply changing my perspective, thinking about, well, where the other hunters going to go? What looks easy and normal? I already have this kind of sense of adventure that I like to call it, that gets me off the beaten path personally, but, again, I'll be listening to this episode again so I can actually hear it, as opposed to trying to, be part of the conversation and really kind of take it in. That all said, thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting. Again, I can never say that enough. If you haven't downloaded the Where to Hunt app, it is in full swing. We're getting about 800 downloads per week right now. There's a lot of users out there, and the more people that are using it, the more effective it's actually becoming. So I thank everybody for trying it out and checking it out. It means a lot to me. And, thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, great day, great morning, great night, great treadmill, great car ride, whatever it is you're doing when you're listening to this, and have a great hunt safe, and hunt public.